Ladies and gentlemen, the show we've all been waiting for, Paranormal Buzz Radio is proud to present REP Paranormal and Friends with your hosts, Kim Purvis and Allison Robinson. Live every Thursday night on Spreaker, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, 5 Pacific. Be sure to check out their Facebook page, REP Paranormal Busters.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey everybody, welcome to another night of REP Paranormal and Friends. We have a special guest tonight. We have Penny from Haunted Histories, so welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, give it 10 minutes and you'll be like, oh, she never shuts up.
No, that's the kind we like. Well, so why don't you, for those that may not be familiar with you, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Oh, well, firstly, you can probably tell from listening to my accent, I'm not from America or Canada. I'm based over here just outside of London in the UK in a county called Essex. I do a podcast called Haunted Histories. I've just relaunched with a new because I've been doing it for about 3 years now. I've just relaunched with a new station, Paranormal UK Radio, and it's fortnightly. I'm also an author. I've written 2 books now, one called My Haunted History, the other one called A Haunted Experiment. I'm an author and a sort of blog writer. I write I write a lot of blogs on my own website, Haunted Histories. I like to keep things simple so people remember where to find me. Hauntedhistories.co.uk. I also write for quite a few different paranormal groups. I write for Haunted Magazine as well. And I sort of started getting on the lecture circuit and doing sort of kind of history with a twist, shall we say, presentations at sort of supernatural fairs and all that kind of thing. And I think that's about it for now. But it's basically history and the paranormal and kind of how the two meet, but also how it's quite easy to prove when maybe people are talking rubbish about certain historical events that they supposedly have picked up on investigations and have made it suddenly fact, as opposed to, well, this is what we think happened. And that's kind of how I got into it.
Awesome. Yes, I was going to say, I did read your book, A Haunted Experiment.
Yes.
Awesome book.
Yeah. Thank you.
History, and you had a lot of great information in there also about the paranormal and like the Philip experiment for one. Like I didn't know anything about that. I never even heard about it.
A lot of people haven't. I mean, the way that book came about. I mean, I do explain in the book how I'm one of those people who when you come up with an idea for something, you should be able to tell people what prompted that idea. So what weird set of circumstances. And this was actually how I remember when I used one of my day jobs, because I work in financial services, and this idea I'd told it to my direct line manager, and he was like, oh, that's not very good. Then I overheard him telling it to the director of sales for the company I was with, who was like, that was a brilliant idea, blah, 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 so impressed you came up with it. And I'm sitting there thinking, hang on, that was my idea. and he's just stolen it. But what he didn't realise, I was quite good friends with this director, and I'd already told him my idea. So he knew, and he turned round to this manager and said, so what was the idea? Because I could tell someone exactly the background of how I came up with things. And so with a haunted experiment, the whole reason it came about was I was on a sounds quite grand, a photo shoot for a newspaper in the UK, and there was sort of 5 other very well-known paranormal women in our industry over here, and they were talking about something to do with EVPs and everything else, and I just said, well, where did that come from? Who came up with it? What was the background? And I thought, for me, I'm quite interested in learning, being a historian, the background to things. Like, who came up with the idea to record sort of thin air to see if anything comes out with it? Where did it come from? What are some of the names? And I think it was MJ Dixon gave me a couple of names to sort of look up. And that gave me the idea to write a book called All About the Experiments. And rather than explaining how to do them, because there's loads of great writers out there and great paranormal investigators out there who will give you the ABC of how to do these experiments, I'm more interested in how they came about. So some of the information, so that if people want to learn about the background to them, as opposed to just doing them, they could do that as well, because that's what appeals to me as a historian. And as I sort of said to people, history doesn't have to be the Battle of 1727 and everything else. History is what has happened. So there's the history of the paranormal, as well as the history of World War One or the history of World War Two or whatever. And that's where it came about, because I thought, I want to know where these came from. I want to know who some of these people were that you hear the names bandied about. And that's really where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, and some of your, excuse me, your thoughts on the things, like, you go in and you discuss how, they were, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I probably wrote it down somewhere, but I can't read my chicken scribbles. It's terrible. My writing is absolutely terrible. But, they're thinking that they are speaking to this certain person, but is it really that person? Could somebody else be, responding to that name just because they want to talk to someone?
Well, yeah, because the whole concept of the Philip experiment is that, can you conjure up a make-believe spirit? Can a collective consciousness, for want of a better term, conjure a spirit up, almost like make one up? And I always think of that film, and I've completely forgotten the name of the film. It was the one that was in the 80s where the boys conjure up Kelly Brock using the computer. Weird Science.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of the... Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Weird Science. It's called Weird Science. Yes. And they use that big computer and they conjure up their perfect woman, and it's Kelly Brock. Mm-hmm. And I sort of liken it to that. It's like, can you put all this stuff into, like, the computer being our brains and use that power to conjure up a spirit? And that's kind of what the theory behind the Phillips is. But my sort of thing is, well, how often do people call you by the wrong name, yet you still answer? Mm-hmm. And I know I was on the Haunt Mess podcast with those 3 great girls, Courtney, Dee Dee and Sarah Jane. And we were talking about this, and Sarah Jane kept calling me Peggy. But I kept answering. It's a standing joke now. If anyone ever sees her write to me on my Facebook page or Twitter, she'll say something Peggy, because it's a standing joke now. Yeah. But it proved my point that I'm not going to say on air, oh, by the way, my name's Penny, because it'll make that person look stupid. I will answer it, because I know damn well they mean to be me they're talking to. So I'm not going to make them look stupid. And I sort of said, I think possibly the same thing is when we're trying to interact with spirits, because how do we not know there's a whole load of them lining up? And maybe the one at the front's called Peter. Right. But someone says, I want to talk to Philip. And they're like, who's nearest? Mine's the nearest to Philip. All right, I'll talk to them. I'll pretend I'm Philip. So they get someone to talk to. And we just don't, because we don't know. And, it's like when you go into a place and people have already got that misconception about who they're going to be talking to. And they say, I'm here to talk to Joe. And somebody answers them. Well, that person might not be called Joe. They might be called Fred. Right. But they're like, damn well they're talking about me. They've just got my name wrong. I'll answer them anyway. And we just don't know. And that's kind of what I was sort of inferring with the Philip experiment. That it might have been I can see you better now. It might have been
Let there be light!
Well, the battery was getting low, so I turned it on.
What was I going to say? Yeah, so it might be that they were talking to a real person who was sort of had spent so many years not having anyone to talk to because they're dead and nobody's been understanding them going, hello, I'm here, that they're like, okay, fine, we'll have a nice little conversation with you. So, but yeah, that was an interesting one to do. But what I do say in the book is when I only do snapshots of these experiments at the various places I investigate in the book, because to do it properly, I'd have to spend like a year investigating just one place.
Right.
And that wasn't the purpose of the book, to do an all expose of it. It was to give people some ideas as to things they could do and why they're doing them. And I'm quite honest in the book, is if one of the experiments I try out doesn't yield anything on that time, I'll tell you.
Right.
I'll tell you nothing happened. I'm not going to lie.
Right.
But it was one that the Philip experiment is, out of all of the ones I did, it was the interesting one, and it probably had the most work involved because of the person who had to do the sketch for us. But it was probably the least active of all the experiments. It's probably a way of putting it.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Excuse me. Let's see here. I'm trying to read my chicken scribbles. Like I said, I really need to have somebody I need to hire somebody to write for me, because I can't even read my own writing. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
I know.
I know what I was going to talk about.
My notes,
okay, so
yeah.
You talked a little bit about Malvern Manor and Inez in the book.
Oh yes, yeah, the country.
Tulpa.
Yeah. Mm.
See, I mean, we've been there quite a few times, and you know, I've never got anything that really says that it's Inez there.
No. I mean, I've had quite a lot of conversations with Josh about this, because I know Josh.
Yep.
Even though we've never actually met, we know each other reasonably well to talk to. Kiefer. Kiefer, as I call him, and if you've never met him or seen him, you won't get that joke. But
which one? Who? Josh?
Yeah, Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, Kiefer Sutherland. Yes. Okay. Gotcha. I thought you said something about. Yeah.
No, he looks like Kiefer Sutherland, doesn't he? So I do crack the joke about I'm talking to Kiefer tonight. And him and I have had that conversation, and you know, and talking to Richard Estep when he did his research for The Devil's Coming to Get Me and all of that kind of thing. You know, there is plausibility that Inez, she existed, but she didn't hang herself in that closet. And we just wonder, is it almost, it's because so many investigators have gone in there now. They're like a homing beacon for spirits who want to communicate. So, you know, and if they can't actually speak, maybe they show an image to try and get their point across. But it's like a lot of things. I mean, I had a really interesting one of my podcasts earlier this year. I spoke to Aidan Sinclair, who works on the Queen Mary in LA. And he said that one of the spirits that supposedly was discovered was this little girl. She was about 6 or 7, and she's meant to roam the corridors. And the story came out that she drowned in the swimming pool while the ship was at sea. And I said, okay. I said, well, bear in mind this ship launched in the early 30s. The record keeping from the 1930s onwards is pretty darn good. I said, it must be in the ship's log that a child died while the ship was at sea. That they have to do that, maritime law. And he said, yeah, well, there's not. He said, we have no record of a little girl passing away on board. He said lots of kids came on board with their families, but no little girl. And he said it was a medium who did a session there back in the 90s who suddenly said, oh, it's a little girl. Oh, and she drowned on board. And then that's been taken as fact, rather than anyone actually saying, well, hang on a minute, has anyone actually double checked this?
Right.
Because and it's the same thing with the whole Inez situation, that somebody has taken it as being fact. And this is why Haunted Histories started, because I will always say this, history is actually, fact is more interesting than fiction. You cannot, your imagination, I don't think, cannot imagine something that hasn't happened in history at some point in time that's that horrific. I mean, you know, we're thinking about what we're going through at the moment with the virus. And I know we're slightly further ahead than you guys, aren't we, in it? And we're on lockdown. We're not allowed to visit people's houses. We have to stay in our own houses. The only thing we're really allowed out for is if we have to go to work or to buy food or medicine. That's it. And if you told that's the sort of thing I've seen horror stories written about, like epidemics like this, that you
Right.
can't step out your house because you could get killed.
Mm-hmm.
And yet people think that you have to be if you read some of the most nasty, some of the stuff in history that's happened,
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee a film cannot beat it. But because, people think they need to almost make this stuff up, and they don't,
Right.
because it's there. You just have to find it.
Yep. I agree 100%. Yeah, like I said, I mean, we've been to Malvern, I don't know, a lot of times. And never once have I gotten Inez. Never once.
No.
So, I mean, that's what we were told when we did our, walkthrough the first time we came or whatever, and da-da-da-da-da. But
We're still looking into the history of what you're coming up with in the bathroom.
yeah,
We're still hunting that one down yet.
yeah.
Mm.
But,
Yeah.
never once have I gotten anything about Inez or anything like that. So, I mean, maybe one day it'll come out, but...
Well, the conversation Josh and I had about it is because of the fact that Malvern, it was a hotel at some point,
Right.
wasn't it? It was like, and it would have been a meeting place for when there was weddings or parties or whatever. So it's highly probable, and they do think Innis actually existed. Well, I'm sure, racking my memory now, I'm sure Josh said they actually did find her on the census records.
Mm-hmm.
She could have visited there as part of a party or
Yeah.
something when she was having fun. Now, if she was that unhappy that she did actually take her own life, maybe she does go back there because it's somewhere she's attracted to, because she knows she had a good time
That's true.
when she was there.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it was there that she took her own life, because
Right.
I know there's a lot of some of the accounts I've read is that it's not really a little girl, it's a demon in disguise masquerading as a child to try and lure people in and all that, which, you can't see my eyes rolling at that at the moment, but that is something I just think, sometimes a child is just a
call
child. Sometimes a fish is just a fish, It doesn't have to be demonic.
No.
I mean, Joe, my theory is if she is seen there, it's because it's like a magnet to her because she had fun.
Right.
And she, maybe she is lost. Maybe, if she did take her own life, like she's supposed to have done, maybe she is trying to enjoy herself still. But that's a prime example of somebody saying they've experienced something and it becoming, and I'm saying this in inverted commas, fact.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to be, and that's one of the things with. I have made a few enemies in this industry because I've managed to show historical fact proving their stories are just that. I'm not saying they don't have these experiences. I'm not saying these people don't come through to them. They may not just be the pieces they put together. 2 and 2 doesn't always equal 4. It may equal 5 in some of the instances. And I have had a few of the groups that I work with a lot in the UK actually change their history, their write-ups of places that they're advertising, when I've been able to prove to them that stuff they're putting in there isn't accurate.
Yeah.
And those that want to do it do. Those that want to keep the myths, that's up to them. But it is one of the reasons I started doing haunted histories, because as far as I'm concerned, the real history, when you can actually tally that up with someone's experience, it sends shivers down your spine. And that's what I love. I love those kind of eureka moments.
Yes. Oh, excuse me. I haven't had my caffeine yet this morning, so I'm like...
Oh, it's quite early where you are, though, isn't it? It's only about 9:20, isn't it? About 9:20?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had 3 cups by then. I feel for you.
All right. Oh, I know what I want to talk about was Jorgensen. Now, that was kind of interesting. What people were saying, how they came up with after he passed. Isn't he the one that had like the photograph or something that came up on a TV?
Yes. I'm just looking up that bit. Yes, he's meant to have appeared. Now, Jurgensen, he was one of the ones. He was the one that caught, I think it was bird song or something on his recorder, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. Yes.
And some of his friends, they didn't realise he'd died. and I think it was one of them's wife had heard someone saying, "Look at channel something or other on the television."
Channel 4, I think it was.
Channel 4, thank you.
Mhm.
And when they put it on, and I mean, just reading here the description, he was saying we didn't understand that because we only have 2 television stations. Anyway, so she put the channel 4 on, and looked at the screen, and it was what they used to call him Friedel Jurgensen, and I've put a picture of it, a copy of what they took in the book, and
Yes.
when you look at Friedrich Jurgensen as he was, the fact that this channel should have been in effect white noise, it's quite eerie. The actual picture that he was trying to use white noise to communicate with them, and we use white noise now, don't we, to try and communicate with spirits? So it was quite that was that one when I discovered that when I was researching for the book.
Right.
Yeah, that did send shivers
Right.
up my spine.
Because that was like in the early 1900s?
No, it was a bit later than that, I think. I'm sure it was. I'd have to look in my notes actually when he died.
1959.
1950s, early 60s, I think, if I remember rightly. Yes, sorry, I can't remember all the dates off the top of my head.
That's okay. I knew I had it written down somewhere. I knew it was in the 1900s sometime, but mid 1900s. I'm just looking to see if I've got the actual date of like you say, 1959. Well, that's when he started doing the looking into it. I think it was 1987 that he died. It was relatively recently. Oh, okay, yeah.
So it was 1987. It was 1959 that he started doing a lot of his research when him and his wife went to their summer house, and that's when he started making the tapes. But it was late 80s that he actually passed away. But it's just it's one of those things that you that would have been an amazing experience to have.
Right.
And what an amazing way to contact your friends as well.
Oh yeah, I know. That's that would have been really eerie to see. And it wasn't that long ago, but it was, because really they didn't have the technology back then to, fake some of the things that people do now.
Well, no Photoshop, no digital recorders, no, it was all reel-to-reel tape recorders and very elaborate microphone systems and all of that kind of thing. So no, it couldn't really. And I'm pretty sure when I didn't put all of this in the book because I was doing it more of a snapshot for people. So if people, one of the things I like to do with the history stuff that I put in is give people enough. You know that whole saying, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for his life, or whatever the saying is. That's how I like to be with history. If someone reads something of mine, goes off and reads something else, then comes back to me and says, well, I've read this in relation to what you wrote. What do you think? I'll go into a conversation, but I'm not going to give people everything, because what I want to do is foster an interest in people themselves, that they start asking questions and they start looking into it. Because I obviously, when I research a subject, I do read around it a lot, and I don't just put what people hear in the podcast or read in the blog or whatever. But I think giving people the ability to get the interest and start looking things up for themselves, that's where I got it from. So I want to pass that on rather than spoon feed people all the answers, because I'm not going to be around forever.
Right.
And I'd rather they've learned how to do it so they can then pass it on themselves, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does. It does make a lot of sense. Let's see here. Oh, another thing you talk about is a lot of triggers.
My favorite.
Yes.
My favorite.
If you want to go into that a little bit, I know you talked about the cat balls and things like that, which we do use some of those. As well. I know a lot of people tend to have their favorite thing. A lot of people, it's EVPs is their favorite thing, or spirit boxes. I do love using the spirit box as well. I have quite good results with that. I like coming up with trigger experiments, because my theory is your only limit to a trigger experiment is your imagination. It doesn't have to just be kids' toys in and what would have been a kid's bedroom or whatever. You can really think outside the box. So, for an example,
one of the places I investigated in the book is an old US Air Force base in Norfolk called RAF Tiverton, which actually the actor Jimmy Stewart flew from for quite some time. And because this was US Air Force, we took an RAF badge in. RAF is the British Air Force. Now, it's well known there was no love lost between the American Air Force and the British Air Force. There was a lot of... So we took a RAF badge in with us to see if we could generate any kind of, I can't do an American accent, but an American saying, what the hell are you doing with that in our airbase kind of thing. Things like that.
Right.
And it worked. We got some quite sort of stuff coming through on the Ovilus that was quite sort of, get that out of here, British scum, things like that. So it was all done in tongue-in-cheek, but it definitely produced some activity. Another one, I'm a big believer in music. Producing stuff, and that was one of the experiments I did. It was at a place called the Kersal, which is near the coast in Essex, and this was in the 60s and 70s. This place was a rock venue, rock music venue, and the kind of bands that played there: AC/DC, Deep Purple, Thin Lizzy, Judas Priest, stuff I absolutely adore. And so I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll play some of the music that would have been played here in that era, and as a trigger. And I can't remember the exact number of K2s we had set up on this sort of like ledge, if you like. No electricity or anything coming through this ledge. I hasten to add, I did actually double check that beforehand, even though this was only like a let's see what happens kind of thing.
Right.
And we were playing A Whole Lot of Rosie by AC/DC. Now, I used to sing in rock bands. I can sing that song. And so I'm dancing around, singing along to it to try and get the energy levels up. And I hit the high note at the end of the intro. And one of the guests who was there, she just stood there and she went, blimey, if that's not worth a round of applause, I don't know what is. And every single K2 just pinged straight up to red, like one after the other.
Yes.
It was like, and the energy in there, it just went mad. People were seeing figures walking. It's a bowling alley now where the stage would have been, and people were seeing figures walking along the bowling alley. We were doing table tipping, and I kid you not, the table was balancing on one leg.
Oh wow!
And I was double checking that nobody was pushing it, and they weren't. But the weirdest thing about that was that if I smell something and I'm with a group of people that I don't know that well, I don't tell them what I've smelled. I've just said, can anyone smell something? And let them tell me what they think they're smelling. Right. And I think it was 5 of us had our sort of forefingers on the table, if you like. And 3 said marijuana. That's and that was what I could smell as well. I could smell someone was smoking hash. Yeah. But the weird thing was, we're non-smoking in the UK, so nobody smokes in this place. And I'm checking everyone around us. Do any of you smoke? No. And I'm smelling people's clothes to see if I could smell it on their clothes. Nothing. Anyone outside of us going, can't smell anything. But someone stepped back and let another person step in, and they went, who's smoking dope? And it literally was, if you had your fingers on the table, you could smell it. Oh, wow. Without telling what we could smell outside of the table, if that makes sense. And that was quite weird. That was I've had things like that happen before where a few of us have been able to smell it and nobody else has, but to have it to the point where if someone stepped away from the table they couldn't smell it anymore, but none of us smelled of it, if that makes sense. So it was like we were back in a 60s rock gig. It was and it felt like that as well. It felt like that kind of energy of being at a really raucous, raw gig. I think that was an amazing bit of evidence from that one, but we also had somebody had an SLS camera set up on a table, so they weren't moving it around, and they were like, Pen, come here. And I walked over and I watched what was coming up on the screen, and I kid you not, it looked like someone was headbanging and someone was playing air guitar.
Oh wow. Yeah, I do remember reading that. Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And someone was videoing it, what was coming up on the screen. There was nothing it could map into. We checked that. And without telling a few people, I sent them the video and said, what does this look like? And they didn't know the circumstances. They didn't know where I'd been, the experiment I was doing. And they said, it looks like someone's playing air guitar and someone's headbanging. Why? And I had that from 3 different people who I sent it to. That was... Then the fact that would tie in with rock gig, with the music I had playing. So yeah, I do love coming up with triggers But that's also sometimes where my history knowledge will come in, because I can think of triggers that are historically relevant to the period of the property
Right.
that I'm going into.
Well, we did.
We did a music thing down at Melbourne.
Yeah.
Did waltzes, and we were getting action.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And we did it at Edinburgh too. We were actually playing Christmas music down in the cafeteria, and we were getting pings off the K2 when we play different Christmas music. And then when we actually went upstairs, there's an old
Organ.
and the music was turned to a Christmas song.
Yeah.
It was kind of strange, but
Music is so powerful. I mean, without sort of spoiling it for anyone who might read the book, I got activity from using the correct era music, if you like, at the US Air Force, but RAF Tibenham as well. And one of the stories I put in there about it is all to do with music and a party, and of what one of the pilots actually experienced, sort of, because it's a private airfield now. He told me a story of something he experienced. Altered again to do with music. So yeah, it's an amazing thing to use, but sometimes you do have to find the right piece of music for the right trigger. So if you'd gone into Malvern or somewhere like that and you'd used music that was from the wrong era, it possibly would have had them going, that's not right, what's that? But if you find a piece that's, so for example, if you'd gone in, I don't know, to somewhere that's 1940s and you were playing the Beatles, it probably wouldn't do anything. Right. Same as if you went into somewhere, say, from the 1970s and you were playing, I don't know, Elizabethan chanting, probably wouldn't do anything. You've got to find something that's going to have a link to whatever the purpose of that building was. I mean, anything to do with World War II, anything American World War II, if I play anything like Glenn Miller, things go bonkers every time. Oh, wow. Glenn Miller seems to, that sort of stuff. And possibly, I've never tried There'll Be Bluebirds Over Bluebirds Over. Like, I've never tried that one in a place, because most of the places I've gone have been more American than British. But things like that. But no, Glenn Miller, wherever I play that, if it's to do with the US Air Force, it goes bonkers. But I do know that Glenn Miller played nearly all the US Air Force bases at some point in the UK. Right. So that could be why. But yeah, music. I just love coming up with triggers, and whether it's someone dressing up in a costume from the time, whether it's using vernacular and language, or reciting something in the news from that time, or whatever it is. I just think there's such cheap and easy experiments to do. Right. You don't need to spend lots and lots of money on the gadgets to do them. Nope. And you can have so much fun with them, and they're not disrespectful. You just, it's not a disrespectful thing. Right.
Exactly. Like at Edinburgh Manor here, we've brought like pill bottles, and put like little Tic Tacs, and we'll pretend that we're going around to the rooms to give them their pills or whatever, and we've gotten responses from that too, on the Ovulus and the Spirit Box, responding to it, which is pretty neat. Kim has an old hat that she takes sometimes with her.
Yeah, I bought it in an antique store, and it seems like it gets more action with my little derby hat, than any of it.
Yeah.
I'll set it on the bed, and the K2 will start going off, and
But that's the point. You can use your imagination and find stuff that I've got a box of stuff that I call it my trigger box, and I'm collecting bits and bobs to go in it that are from different time periods, different ideas, different bits of music, coins from different eras and countries, and so that whenever I do an investigation, even if it's one that I'm helping out a public group to do, like a public snapshot of what investigating is like, I can introduce them to things that they may not have thought about before, that are, not just the walking around with a K2 going, if you're here, can you make it light up kind of thing. Right. Trying to give them something different, something that's, and I normally find that goes down really well with the public as well. A lot of them want to learn these little tricks and little ideas. They don't want to be just shoved into a group of 20 people in the hope that something knocks on a wall next to them. Right. So I'd say I do have my little box of triggers that I'm just gradually collecting stuff that I think, well, that actually might be quite interesting, or I know I can do an experiment with that, and yeah, and they say it doesn't have to cost a lot. You can pick up old coins for like 50 pence, like 50 cents or whatever, and you've got a couple of coins from World War One sort of thing that you could use if you're going in somewhere that was a World War One base, or someone lived. It was a hospital during World War One, and it's just about thinking laterally and thinking, well, what might appeal? I know I love it. I love triggers. I love them.
Yeah, we do too, just to see if we can get anything from them. I mean,
yeah,
we have some games and things that we have taken, and
I've been looking for all my. I have a collection of Army hats, Navy hats, and stuff. I've been trying to find. I'm going to put them in depending on where we go.
Yeah.
See what we can come up
Well,
with.
you might find though, if you put an Army hat in a Navy or vice versa, you will get some sarcastic stuff coming through, because I know a lot of the forces didn't like each other.
Yeah.
That's been my experience doing military stuff. If you go in with the wrong badge or the wrong, even different sort of.
For that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's not normally nasty. It's normally more sort of tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But like if you're rival football fans or whatever. But that sometimes you can use it as, I did it once and I pretended I was just being, because I'm blonde, and I just pretended to the spirits I was being a dumb blonde, and I've come in with the wrong insignia, that kind of thing, and they seem to sort of like, oh, poor little girl sort of thing. But sometimes you do it. It's all about staging it. I think of it, if they're intelligent, sentient beings, they're going to appreciate a bit of a joke or a bit of a flirt, or because they're humans appreciate that whether they're dead or alive.
Right.
So no, I do. I mean that sometimes is the trigger I use. I might go in and sort of be a bit overly flirtatious, or I go in cracking jokes left, right, and centre, or just to see what's going to work. What do they need? What is going to incentivize them to say, yep, okay, I'm going to communicate.
Right.
As long as it's respectful, and I think I've only got into an argument with one spirit that I've literally got quite angry with, and stood up to. Normally, I'm quite sort of, I don't want to antagonize them, because I know if somebody walked into my house now and started going, oh, are you? Why aren't you louder? Why aren't you doing this? I'd be like, get out.
Exactly.
Who do you think you are? Right. But no, I've only got into a wrangle with one spirit so far, and he backed off eventually. So yeah, he was a bully. But we found out why he was a bully. So.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Excuse me. I know that Kim and I sometimes, when we go in to investigate, sometimes we'll just sit down and we'll just have a regular conversation. And then sometimes they will come to us, like they'll start knocking or make something move or whatever, like, hey, I'm here, and then...
They don't like to be ignored
No,
sometimes.
no.
So then we'll add them into our conversations.
Yeah, that was something that I did. I was at it was an old pub near in the Midlands in the UK, and I was there before we had the lockdown started. And the group I was with, they say it was a public event, but it's not. They don't have loads of people. I think we had about 8 or 9 members of the public, which was quite a nice little number. And you could feel it had gone a bit flat, the floor we were on. And so the group owner and I we just started nattering. And I could see the public sort of looking at us going, they've lost it. They don't realise we're not here. Why are they not doing them? And he just turned around to them. He said, sometimes, and as soon as we started, it was about 2 minutes into us nattering, we heard a crack in the corridor outside that we never heard before. And everyone's like, woo! And Chris was trying to explain to them that sometimes it's when you're not paying attention and you're not strongly focused that things start to happen. I mean, my favourite go-to is when it gets a bit like that, I start acting the fool and making people laugh, because I also go on the Monsters Inc. theory. Now, anyone who's seen the Monsters Inc. film or knows me, laughter produces more energy than fear. So if I can get people laughing, things tend to happen. And that's, and I've been told I'm disrespectful. I've been told I crack too many jokes. Well, I don't. It's only when it goes quiet or there's a lull that I start cracking the jokes. And they're never at a spirit's expense. They're normally at my own expense, to be quite honest. Or if I know someone really well in the group, I'll do it at their expense. It's never nasty. It's never. But I'm quite sarcastic, so I'll come out with liners to get people to start laughing, or make myself look stupid to get people laughing, and it works. And if that doesn't work, then you know that the spirits don't want you there anymore, and they want you to go home because they've had enough.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think people don't. And I remember this group. They were like, we never thought if you ignore them, they're likely to come forward. And I was like, well, yeah. I said if you've been paying them loads of attention for the last 20 minutes and they're still sort of quite stubbornly going, no, I'm not going to talk to you. No, we know you're there. I'm not going to talk to you. And like you say, you start ignoring them. They're like, huh? All right, we'll give you something. We'll give you a little bit so you don't go away. And it does work like that very often. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we do that quite a bit, especially, if we're having a quiet time, and we'll just start chit-chatting or whatever, and then lo and behold, we'll get some action, and I'm like, oh, okay. So we'll be like, hi.
And then we'll bring them right into our conversation with us, and
we
don't even ask who they are or anything, just bring them on in.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're probably as used to it as I am. You're talking to thin air, but you're actually having a proper conversation. When I know when my husband first did it, he was like, I do what? And I said, just talk to thin air. You know, don't be stupid. And I went, honestly, no one's going to care. Honestly, no one's going to care. Now, I mean, he's only done, I think it's 3 investigations with me. But now, you give him a spirit box and a recorder, he's off. He's nattering away to them, chatting back to what comes through on the spirit box, asking them to say it again because he couldn't quite hear them. And it's like, you're the one who sort of, a few years ago thought I was absolutely nuts talking to thin air. Now, he's like, he still admits he's a scaredy cat compared to me. He will still run if he hears something. I run to it, he runs away from it. But yeah, he's started to get why sometimes I'll walk into an old building, because we both love old buildings just as history. And we'll walk into an old building and I'll be going, I know you're over there in the corner, why don't you come forward? And now he's used to me doing that. So are my kids, actually. My oldest son, my 10-year-old, he does it. He'll walk into a room and he'll be like, Mum, can you feel anything in here? And I went, yeah. And he went, right. He went, whoever that is, can you come forward? Can you come and tap me on the shoulder? And it's like, you're 10. You really shouldn't be doing that just yet. But, they've got so used to it with me that, and it freaks my son's friends out, because we'll go somewhere for the day as like a family with a few friends. And first thing I have to say to my 10-year-old, can you please stop doing that in front of your friends, because you're scaring them. Because it'd be like, Mum, can you feel anything in here? And the kids will be going, what's your mum feeling? And it's like, it's all right, it's not going to hurt you. You are feeling something. Yes, I'm feeling something. I have to lie now and say, no, nothing in here. And then my son pulls me to one side and he went, there is, isn't there? And yeah, I can feel it. I've already seen something move past that window, and whereas he doesn't get scared by it anymore, his friends still do. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. That is true. Well, I've taken my oldest one. I think she was 13 when she went. We took her to Farrar School.
And, brilliant.
And, yeah. She was fine until we hit the auditorium. That's when she had her attack, because she's like, there is way too many of them in here. I cannot handle this. And so she stayed in the safe room for most of the time. But, she still has things happen. She'll hear things at night, or she'll tell me things that have happened or whatever. But she's kind of interested in, she wants to know more, but then again, she doesn't want to know more because it still freaks her out a little bit. But
my eldest, he wants to do investigating. I mean, he hero worships Chris Smith from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers. And it really sort of infuriates him that I actually know Chris, and I can actually send Chris an email and get a reply back, sort of thing. And part of him thinks it's really cool, and the other part of him is sort of really sort of like, that's not fair. But I've told him that you're 10, you're not doing a proper overnight investigation until you're 16 minimum.
Right.
But and when anyone listening will think, well, she takes a 10-year-old investigating. I don't. You know, I'm talking about going to, say, an old fort in the middle of the day as a family trip out, because we've got English heritage memberships. We like museums. We like old buildings as a family.
Right.
And paranormal activity doesn't have to be just at night at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's all the time. And both of my kids, I mean, my younger one is on the autistic spectrum, so he's hard to explain this stuff to because it freaks him out. So I tend to sort of just leave it, but he sees and experiences stuff because he's told me before. But I just go, oh, really? That's cool. Pretty cool. Try not to sort of scare him, and so that he freaks out by it, because I'd rather he just thought it was normal. So his brain can actually process it. But no, the 10-year-old, I mean, he's had stuff happen to him in the middle of the day in places, and I can't stop that happening to him. But what I can do is explain to him it's nothing to be scared of, and how to talk to me about it, and how to sort of, and also I have started teaching him how to protect himself, and what to visualize, and if he doesn't like something, tell me and we'll leave that room. You know, if we're in a museum and he's like, I really don't like it in here, Mum, I really don't like it, we'll just leave the room. We'll walk away. Because it is all around, in my view, and it's not just sort of between the hours of 9 at night and 2 o'clock in the morning. And I say stuff we've all experienced as a family attests to that, but I wouldn't actually take him full-blown investigating at night until he's at least 16. If he wants to do it when he's 16, then I will take him and I'll teach him. But yeah, I think he'll be so second nature to him by then.
Definitely.
I reckon we'll be the first mother and son investigation team on telly or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Move over to Kota Leyden. My son's coming through. Yeah, something like that. But I don't think there's anything wrong teaching kids about it. It's how you teach them. And one of his little school friends, she reckons she learned a ritual how to summon a ghost, and her mum was like, "What do I do?" And she, because she respects the daughter respects me, I was like, "Just tell her it's a load of hooey." It's and she's like, "Have you never done it?" I said, "No, you can't summon a ghost. You know, they've got free will."
Right.
And yeah, but it was something a friend of hers had found on YouTube. How to summon a ghost. It almost looked like they were doing a yoga routine to do it, and I must admit, I thought it was hilarious, but bless them.
I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah, I couldn't actually find it when I started looking it up, but yeah, it just made me laugh. But fortunately, the mum's a good friend of mine, and the daughter is quite impressed by what I know and do, and so she came to me and asked me, and I was like, "Don't bother, you're not going to summon it." But it's all good fun. It's all good fun. But if I teach them the right way of doing it, and teach them the importance of knowing what they're doing, and being respectful, I'm happy with that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, my daughter's, like I was talking about her. She, hears and feels and sees things. And we were recently at my grandfather's home, who recently passed away. And we had gone upstairs, and all of a sudden, she just froze, and she was like, "Can we just go? Can we just get out of here?" She didn't want to talk about it, nothing, so we took her outside. She was a lot better outside, but my mom and I, we were having our drinks, our cocktails, if you want to say, and we're like, "Well, we have to finish these before we can actually leave." And she's like, "Can't you just drink them in the car?" And I'm like,
that bad?
Yeah, she didn't want to talk about it, though. It's like... So now it has me intrigued. I'm sure she'll tell me eventually, but that's just how she is. It takes her a little bit to come around to those things. She's interested in it, but yet, it still freaks her out to some extent. Yeah. But
yeah, my 10-year-old isn't as attuned as he used to be. I think that's a typical boy thing. He's discovered his mates and football, soccer, and all of that kind of thing. My 6-year-old, who's on the spectrum, he sees things a lot more because his brain doesn't tell him he shouldn't. But I do know some of the things my 10-year-old saw when he was younger, he would tell me stuff there was no way he could know. And I don't know why it's never really phased him. I think because I'm so sort of blasé about it. But I have said to them, don't tell your mates, because people won't always understand. I mean, there's some of the parents at my kids' school who think I'm a witch as it is because of what I do. So there's worse things to be called, but not a witch in a good way. And you know, some of them sort of look me up and down like I need to be institutionalized, but that's only because they never ask the questions. But it is fascinating what kids can pick up on when you give them a chance to tell you what they're seeing and feeling. And but I know with him, he wouldn't be able to cope with a full-blown investigation. He would get scared. He's not. He would get too scared, and the last thing I want is for him to be scared by it. When I think it could be a genuine interest and genuine sort of baton for me to pass on at some point to him. I've just got to get more interested in history now. Yeah. But we'll get there.
Now you do have another book, which I have not gotten to yet. I have some books I need to read for some podcasts, but you have your My Haunted Histories. Do you want to give us a little bit of a background on that one?
Yeah. Now, I will say that one of the things you find with writers, and I found this, and a few of my writer friends, people like Richard Estep, Mike Cavell in the UK, and a few others said to me, is you'll notice your writing style improving. When I read through A Haunted Experiment, which I released this year, compared to My Haunted History, which I released last year, my writing style has evolved tenfold. But My Haunted History came about because, say, I'd been doing the Haunted Histories podcast since 2017, and I do an awful lot of research for the history on each place, because what my podcast actually does, so for example, I have done one on the Farrar School, I've done one on Malvern Manor that you mentioned, the other one you mentioned, Edinburgh, it's pronounced Edinburgh, not Edinburgh, like
Edinburgh, yep.
Edinburgh, because in Scotland we have Edinburgh,
yes,
which is spelled Edinburgh, but I've never done one on there, on the place you mentioned, Edinburgh. So we might have to have a chat.
Yes.
Return the favour.
Absolutely.
But I do so much history research on these places. So, and somebody said to me, you should turn it all into a book, all the research you've done. I was like, I don't know. I've always wanted to write a book, but I didn't know if I'd be any good at it. And so what I decided to do was one that was 10 places that I've done research on, because I've done a show on, but I've also visited myself and had experiences at. And so there's 10 locations around the UK that I've written like various history stuff. Again, not a whole book's worth on each place, but sort of 3,000-4,000 words on each place. So it gives people a bit of something to whet their appetite. And then I talk about some of the experiences I'd had when I'm visiting these places. I think one review said it was like a 12-month paranormal guide to investigate in the UK, because there's 10 locations, and if you knock off, say, January and December as being non-invest, you've got the other months, you could hit one of these each month as an investigation. But there's places like there's an underground bunker, a secret nuclear underground. It's not so secret. Actually, about 15 minutes up the road from where I live. There's a fort, 2 forts actually. There's an old workhouse. There's an old sort of stately home. There's an old poor school. There's an old US Air Force airfield in Suffolk. And so it's just sort of looking at the history, a little bit on the history of each of them, and then talking about some of the experiences I had, hence My Haunted History. So it's stuff that I've personally experienced whilst visiting these places, and some of the history surrounding them.
That'll be another interesting one to read once I get to those other books. I've been like just nonstop reading lately, and it's just like, oh my goodness. Well, I have nothing else to do, so I can't work, so I might as well just sit down and read.
Yeah, no, I'm a voracious reader anyway, but at the moment, I don't stop. I'm either reading or writing at the moment if I'm not playing with the kids or looking at homeschooling the kids. And at the moment, I'm reading a book about the siege of Leningrad in World War II. Nice little easy read. because I want to write. I'm thinking of writing an article on it for Haunted magazine, so
Oh,
I'm
awesome.
trying to read up on it because there's some quite gory stuff that was involved, and I'm discovering that everyone looks at the Holocaust in World War II, but what Hitler actually had planned for parts of Russia was probably even worse. So it's things like that I'm sort of like, whoa, this is amazing, and I have got a whole. I bought so many books, sort of secondhand books, and picked them up and everything to read. That I do love to read and learn, and I'm lucky if some of the authors that I read now, I actually know the author to message them and say, this bit you put, what were you talking about, or what are the, and sort of delve into it a bit more that way. Most I can tell you, as anyone who reads one of my books, most authors that I know of are happy to be contacted by someone saying, that bit you put about such and such, can you talk to me about it? And most authors I know love that kind of should we say conversation about, because they will have enjoyed what they were writing, so to be able to talk about it, they love to do that. I know I do, even just blogs that I've written that go on my website. If someone wants to chat to me about one, it's like, yeah, cool, let's go, because it's sort of you wrote about it because it was interesting, so to talk about it is a no-brainer.
Absolutely, I agree. Excuse me.
Back to your experiments. We're gonna try a couple experiments. We're gonna take an old recorder with the tapes and see what we can come up with. Go back to old school. We're gonna
analog. And I can't even speak. Analog recorder.
Yeah,
rather
not
than
a digital one. And then we're gonna try Polaroid cameras and different kinds of cameras. And then have our digital doing the same pictures and see what they all come up with.
Yeah. I know that's something that I do know a few investigators in the UK have started doing more and more, just to see what the difference is. I think one of the I'm not an expert on photography. I know people who are sort of real experts on it. I think one of the things they said, the difference between the old style cameras, like the Polaroid cameras, compared to digital, is you're less likely to see orbs because the shutter speed, which it's got to be a good thing.
Right. Yes.
And things like that. There will be a difference there. I think the thing with tape recordings is you are likely to get more fuzz in the background because of the tape noise. Right. But there are sort of beliefs that the tape is more likely to get the spirit imprint on it, so that you hear stuff, as opposed to the digital. We could just be the signal. I can't think what the word is, like blipping out, and then because your brain wants to make order out of the chaos, it's that kind of audio pareidolia that it believes it's heard something. The thing is, though, with all of this, for everyone who can say, no, it's this, it's pareidolia, it's this, you've got someone else who can say, well, actually, that answered the question I had. And I didn't know the answer until I looked it up. So I'm a skeptic, but I believe it's possible. I just don't believe every single thing I hear or see. But when you get direct answers, I think one of mine, I was actually on a history podcast earlier this week, and I was talking about, she was saying, what's the one that's really sent a shiver up your spine? And I said, I know exactly which experience it was. I was at this place called Highlands House in Essex, and it's this beautiful white sort of Georgian house. It was built in, I think it was the 1700s, but during World War II, it was the headquarters for the SAS, who were our sort of special ops, elite special ops, and they were quite new. They were only formed during World War II. Now, they're the ones that do. They are the elite. The equivalent, if not more, of the Navy SEALs, and they were based there. And one of the things about the SAS is that if someone is a member of the SAS, you wouldn't know it. Their military record will only ever say that they were, I think, a corporal, their number, if you like, and where they normally say the regiment they started with, so whether they were paras or Marine Commandos or whatever. Anyway, I was there and someone was running a portal device, and it kept coming through saying Penny Corporal, and I wasn't the only one that heard it. There was about 7 or 8 other people that said, it's saying Penny Corporal. And I'm like, okay. And so I said to this sort of the room, as you do, I'll come back on with a couple of people on our own later if you want to talk to us. Yes, came through the answer. Okay. So I went back there later with just one friend who was also a World War II historian by trade. And we had novelists running. And I said, okay, I'm here. Do you want to talk to us? What's your name? And it came through. It said, Corporal, this is on a novelist, Corporal Terry Knott, spelled Knott.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that's a bit specific. We carried on chatting, and then we said, did you die in World War II? And it came back, yes, Europe. So I'm writing all this stuff down, thinking it's just luck. It's just luck. Because then it kind of, a few other devices blipped at us, and then it went quiet. Anyway, when I was at home, I thought I'll have a look and see if I can find a Corporal Terry Knott in the military records.
Yeah.
Oh, I did. I found a Corporal John Terence Knott, not spelled Knott, who was with the Royal Marine Commandos, who died in Germany in a battle that I found was a predominant SAS battle, and he's buried in Europe. And all his record, and I delved into the records, all his record would show was that he was a Royal Marine Commando. He died in North Germany, where he was buried, and his kind of badge number, so to speak. No other details. And when I spoke to him, we can't prove unequivocally he was SAS because their records are sealed. You do not know if unless they were an officer, they do not say that they were SAS. But everything else was correct. The fact that his name was Corporal John Terence Knott, and that he died in World War II in what I know was a heavily SAS involved battle. I can't say 100% definite it's accurate,
right?
But it's still enough, even now when I think about it, for me to get goosebumps.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like sitting here like all.
I got goosebumps.
Just thinking about it.
I mean, you only really need to get one of those in your career, and it's enough to make you go. That's enough to doubt those people who say it doesn't exist, because to get that to come through, that accurate,
right?
And I still can't work out why novelists had the word "not" spelt Knott, because not N-O-T, or even not as in the speed Knot, but it came up as Knott.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that was probably one of my most, and the fact that he wanted to speak to me. There is a standing joke amongst friends of mine that they call me the military magnet, that if I go anywhere that's got a military link, I'll get someone come through.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a middle-aged mum of 2. I ain't nothing special. They're not going to come chasing after me. The only theory I've got is because of my love of history, and I do like military history, they come through to me because they kind of think, well, maybe she'll understand what we're trying to tell her because she'll know the information. That's the only theory I've got. But that one is one that I still smile about now. And that was what, 4 or 5 years ago that happened, 3 or 4 years ago. It's still one that if someone says, what's one of your most amazing experiences, it's that, because it was just a jaw on the floor when I found his records. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just insane. Absolutely, yeah. That's
Definitely.
because you never know sometimes with the obvious, though, you know. And so when you get something like that, and then you're able to validate some of it, that helps as well.
Yep. None of the answers he gave on the Ovilus didn't apply to him, if that makes sense. Every single word that came through.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you get something random like bacon will come through, and you're just like, bacon. But in this particular experience, every single word that came through applied when I found his army record, or his military record, what I could find of it anyway. It was just one of those experiences. Sort of subtle. The place was quite subtle. It wasn't like bang, crash, wallop type place. But that was enough to make me go, okay, there is definitely something in this. You've just got to sift through the non-stuff.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so before we wrap things up here, why don't you go ahead and give us your information on where people can find your books, where they can find you, your blogs, your podcasts.
Oh. Well, the easiest thing is head on over to Facebook. I've got a Facebook page called Haunted Histories, and you'll see me on there quite frequently posting stuff and sharing other people's history stuff and everything else. Mm-hmm. I also am on Twitter. If you look up Haunted Histories, I like to keep things easy. I like to keep the consistency. So if you remember Haunted Histories, just search for me on Google and it'll come up. Haunted Histories on Twitter. I've got my website's hauntedhistories.co.uk. That's where I tend to post the blogs initially. Then I'll share them to Twitter and Facebook for people to have a read. Mm-hmm. My podcast is on, I believe it's Podbean, amongst others. Mm-hmm. But if you go onto my Facebook page, I link into it on there, and that's through something called Paranormal UK Radio. Okay. If you want to read my Haunted Magazine articles, obviously go jump onto the Haunted Magazine page, because you can access old magazines for free. Awesome. Digitally. Okay. I know there'll be a new mag out. I think the boys are working on it to come out in about 3 or 4 weeks. Mm-hmm, so Yep. There's some great writers in that. And my books are on Amazon. You can either get them in Kindle format or in hard copy format, whichever is your preference. But I've also got on my website, I've got links into buying them as well, if you want to go through the website instead. But I've only got links into the UK Amazon on my website, so if you're America or Canada or whatever, it's probably best to go through your own Amazon.
Yes, because when you send me that link, I'm like, this isn't coming up for me.
Just search Penny Griffiths Morgan and it will come up whichever Amazon you're under, because it's on worldwide Amazon. I think the only one you can't buy the actual book in, you have to do the Kindle, is Australia. For some reason they don't allow the books for Australia. But I don't know why, but if anyone listening from Australia or New Zealand really wants a hard copy of the book, I'm sure we can come to an arrangement on. I'll send one out and you can cover the postage and the cost of the book. But yeah, that's the only place I think they don't. It's something to do with the Amazon publishing thing, but everywhere else you can get it. So yeah, just head on over to Amazon, put my name in, and it should come up with both my books.
One question you gotta ask you.
Oh yes, I do have one more question. I almost forgot. This is a running question by one of our listeners. He usually asks. He likes to know, what is the one object in the world that you would not want to be haunted?
Oh, my bed.
Your bed. Hey, that's a good answer.
I think that's the first one of those.
I think so too.
We've got garbage disposal. We've got cars. We've got toilets.
We got a butt plug.
Yeah.
Hang on, a haunted sex toy would be pretty good, wouldn't it? Really?
I know, right?
No, my bed. My bed is my sort of. I don't really want to be lying in bed going, "Oh, for Pete's sake, go away." You know what I mean? I want to sleep or whatever.
I don't want my bed shaking and flying up in the air or anything.
No. Your car. Well, if I had a Christine, I'd just sell it and get a new one. Yeah, if my house was haunted, that's fine. As long as I can still go to sleep, I can deal with it.
Yep.
But no, my bed.
Yes. I agree with you on that one too. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for being on tonight.
You're so welcome.
Awesome.
I enjoyed it.
I know. And I mean, there's so much to talk about though with this, but
I can come back.
I know, an hour goes so fast.
I can come back again. Don't worry.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we'll definitely have you back on again. So just hang on one second here.
Thank you for listening to REP Paranormal and Friends. Be sure to check out Kim and Allison on Facebook at REP Paranormal Busters.